Alright, so as promised, we have our final part of Numbers, part 12. And of course, our productivity this morning. Alright, so it's the final part. It's not as long as I was anticipating. It goes through a great summation of actually the journey of the Israelites. So if you'd like to read the progression or the stages of their journey before they get into the land of Canaan, it's all listed at the very end of Numbers, or the last final verses here. It starts in verse 33, or in chapter 33.
And go outside.
What was that? I know, he's off punishment now. He's fine.
No good, mama. Couldn't even go the whole day. She's Louise.
Alright, sorry. We're starting the morning here.
Watch out. She's gonna go around.
Anywho, so anyways, the progression starts in chapter 33, and if you'd like to read the entire thing to discover where they've gone and where they've been, it's all there. So we cover that, and then we're going to go into a little bit of just finalization of the justice system, which was very, very in its bare bones, simple justice, which we will learn about. So let's go ahead and start off with our quote, which we forgot yesterday, but I added it in the comments. The quote for today is, "The four pillars of government, which are religion, justice, counsel, and treasure." Period. That's it. This is from the Seditions and Troubles, of Seditions and Troubles. Again, probably by Francis Bacon. I'm not entirely sure. But we're learning about the four pillars of government here in this quote. And we can think about, if we're incorporating religion, justice, counsel, and treasure, we don't really have all four of these established by different groups of people in the Israelite community. We have, of course, religion, right? We have counsel and treasure, but that's all handled by the Levite tribes. As far as justice goes, that's carried out by the people and the Lord. Of course, we hear about the Lord working on acts of revenge or acts of justice. It's truly justice. But the people also are to carry out their own methods of justice, especially when it comes to murder within the Israelite community. If it's horizontal violence, and if it's one part of or one person in a community attacking another person within the same community or in another tribe, that justice is to be carried out in between the two. Oh, hold on. Come on, baby. Come in. Air Force was on punishment this morning because he went outside of the fence, which he's not supposed to do, but there is a hole in the fence that he knows how to get through. He discovered that, and he's allowed outside now. This was very early. Can't keep him inside forever, but he was on punishment. That's what we were talking about. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into this. Again, not too long. This is our final part of Numbers here. It says, "Here are the stages in the journey of the Israelites when they came out of Egypt by divisions under the leadership of Moses and Aaron. They left Etham, turned back to Pi Hahiroth, to the east of Baal Zephon, and camped near Migdol. They left Kibroth Hattaavah and camped at Hazeroth. They left Tahath and camped at Terah. They left Kadesh and camped at Mount Hor on the border of Edom. They left Almon Diblathaim and camped in the mountain of Abarim near Nebo." Okay, so pause right here. Again, this is just a summation of everything that's discussed and every single progression that actually took place. You may remember just from listening to me, we did not go over all of these places, right? The names are unfamiliar. And if you were to read in chapter 33, the whole progression, it's really quite in detail. And of course, we did not have that detail when we were going through each of these books in Exodus, Leviticus, or Numbers. It was, just kind of the main points, right, and the main happenings. And yes, it talked about, oh, they moved here to the general areas, but the actual names of their progression is fully listed here in detail. And there's quite a few. There was a lot of movement, as we might have, guessed. There's a lot of movement, but of course, every single movement was not covered in narrative format, right? So let's go ahead and continue. The Lord said to Moses, "Command the Israelites and say to them, when you enter Canaan, the land will be allotted to you as an inheritance. It is to have these boundaries. It is to have these boundaries. It's to have these boundaries." So again, the Lord is actually commanding to Moses the boundaries of Canaan for the people. Not necessarily where the people are going to be. He's giving them the lines, but the people, as far as what tribes are going to settle in what lines, that is going to be up to the leaders of the tribe, which we will learn about. It says here, "For your northern side boundary, run a line from the Mediterranean Sea to Mount Hor." And then again, it goes through each of the boundaries. If you want to go look in chapter 34 of Numbers, and you can see all the boundaries that the Lord had established. It says here, "These are the names of the men who are to assign the land to you as inheritance: Eleazar the priest and Joshua son of Nun." So, and then the leaders, right? Ahihud son of Shalomi, the leader of the tribe of Asher. So each tribe has its own leader that they're going to help: Eleazar the priest and Joshua son of Nun. And here we are learning about, this is the first big task that is actually recorded and written that Joshua is to take upon himself. Moses is still alive at this time. He's still alive, and Joshua is actually going to be in charge of assigning the inheritance or the land to the different tribes, along with Eleazar, which is Aaron's successor. And then we have Joshua, which was Moses' successor, right? Which is Moses' successor. And then, of course, each of the leaders of the tribes will also assist with this assignment. And it says here, "Now you must give the Levites 48 towns together with their pasture lands." So there's something special about these towns that the Levites get. Along with the towns, the 48 towns that the Levites have, there are also cities of refuge, which we don't really discuss in this snippet here, but it's there in chapter 35. The cities of refuge are places people can go if they're in trouble, if they committed a crime and they don't want to be caught. They actually have kind of like a grace land or a safe haven for criminals within the Israelite community. If they are caught outside of the city of refuge, they could be murdered for their crimes. And really the biggest crime that is talked about, really there's not a lot of fatal, death penalty type crimes, but they can enact the death penalty, or they could kill the person for committing the crime of murder. That's really the only thing that's talked about in chapter 35, with good reason. I mean, we don't want people going around and killing each other with no consequences. So this is what's discussed here. "If anyone strikes someone a fatal blow with an iron object, that person is a murderer and is to be put to death. Or if anyone is holding a stone and strikes someone with a fatal blow with it, that person is a murderer. The murderer is to be put to death." So again, this is people with weapons when they have an intent weapon, right? Like an iron, something that's metalworked, or a stone or something like that, and they do strike somebody and kill them, then they're done. That's no good. There is the case, also with the people that are trying to escape maybe their punishment, or if somebody gets into a scuffle by accident, right, and attempts to hurt somebody or accidentally pushes them and something happens. This is what is discussed here. So much background noise, I'm sorry. I'm not even doing laundry or anything, but just running the water. I don't know if you can hear it, but just take a second. Okay, anyways. "But if the accused ever goes outside the limits of the city of refuge to which they fled, and the avenger of blood finds them outside the city, the avenger of blood may kill the accused without being guilty of murder." So again, this is what I was discussing. They could flee to these cities of refuge, right? They could do their repentance and what have you. And then I think they were able to come back after a time. I think after the high priest or something dies. I think that's what it said here. After the high priest had passed away, then they could come back. But if they came back and the high priest, saw them, and the avenger saw them, or if they left the town and the avenger saw them, then they could be murdered without, that person being guilty, without the avenger being guilty. And then it says here, to sum everything up in chapter 36, no inheritance in Israel is to pass from one tribe to another, for every Israelite shall keep the tribal inheritance of their ancestors. So again, once they're in the land, once they're assigned their boundaries and their townships, they're not to trade places, they are not to, conjoin tribes, and they're not to intermarry between tribes. The point was to keep the tribal ancestors like all one tribe, which is very interesting. So they were not required, but they were encouraged to marry within their tribe. And I'm sure there was some kind of consequence for not doing so, but it's not really discussed here. But it was just very clear, not to combine or, switch places or have like some kind of alliance between one or more tribes, because in reality they were all one community, right? But there was a purpose to keeping everybody in their own divisions and their own towns. Again, it does not really go into detail as to why, but maybe we can formulate some of our own explanations, or by really getting familiar with the word and talking to the Lord, we can understand why that was important. But again, I'm just giving you the facts and just giving you a good summary of everything, just so we can become familiar with things as we go. And it's a lot, I'm not going to lie, right? It's a lot of different things. After we get through Deuteronomy, that will be our 5th book that we've covered thus far. After we get through Deuteronomy, we'll go through kind of like a what we learned segment. That's what I was thinking. What we learned, and what, even though this sounds foreign and it sounds so different from what we're used to, we'll talk about what things that we took from just these 5 books here. What things did we take and we still practice today, or we're trying to incorporate again, that sort of thing. So we'll go ahead and do like a summary and discuss that then. But that's all, you guys. I hope you have a great day. Thank you for listening, and I will catch you again very